To understand my NDE, part of it is it happened in 1976, and I had never heard of an NDE. There was no internet. It wasn't like looking it up, or I didn't even know enough to think I needed to know something. So a big part of it was I didn't know, which has become a blessing in that I needed to know, and in the process of finding out. It's also a blessing that it got me in the right frame of mind for doing spiritual work later on, which is like keep your mind out of it as best you can and focus on the spiritual part, which is different than what we think in our mind. So that really set the tone for me. It was back in 1976. I was in my early 20s. I had been living in Colorado, uh, in the United States, and my life was good. I worked in a restaurant. I liked it. A lot of partying, drinking, smoking pot. And, but there was something was missing even before my near-death experience, because I was thinking of going back to school and getting more of a degree. But something came up. My roommate in Colorado was a friend of mine from high school. So I grew up in the Northeast of the United States in Rye Brook, New York, about 20 miles north of Manhattan. Um, so we decided we happened to have some time off together from work, and we took a trip back to visit our parents in the Northeast. We drove straight through, which was like 1,800 miles. So it was like 24-hour driving straight. We alternated and slept, and like, he had a 280Z, a really fun sports car to drive. Um, we got back in the morning. He dropped me at my parents' house, and we decided to visit with our family and rest a little bit and hook up later. Hooking up back then did not mean what it meant. We were going to get together later on, and so we did that. And he found out about a party another friend of ours from high school was having, and we decided to go. To the party, I took my mom's little Ford Bobcat, which I don't even think Ford makes anymore, but it's like one of the early smaller economy kind of cars, which was always funny to me because my mom always drove this big Cadillac and all of a sudden decided to be more gas conscious, I guess, and got this Bobcat. But so we both went to the party in separate cars, and the party was really happening. A lot of music, people dancing. The place was crowded, and yeah, every room was crowded with people. Some people kind of dancing, some people just standing around talking. So I kind of came up with a plan that I was going to tell the young lady who had the party that I was going to leave my car there. Telling her, because telling her I thought I was too drunk to drive, even though I didn't think I was. My plan was to go back the next day and be able to talk to her outside of the noise of the party and ask her out. So I went in my friend's 280Z with him back, almost back to my parents' house. I realized my sister needed to use my mom's car the next day for work, so I asked him to bring me back. I had explained to him what my plan was and why I said I was too drunk. And so I remember going back. I don't remember walking into the house. I do remember walking through the crowd. I remember walking over the girl who was having the party was sitting on the couch, and I yelled. I don't even know if she heard me. The music was so loud that I was taking my car. And then I remember going through the crowd towards the door. I have a little bit of memory of walking and the walkway out to my car. And then the next thing I remember, I was out of my body. I was in the white light, uh, looking down. My body was leaning against a tree like this with my legs straight out. My head was cracked open. If you look, I have a scar still here. And there was a police officer crouching over me. The car was kind of behind him, and it was so smashed. It was amazing that someone even survived. And I did go back after I got out of the hospital and saw the car. I took a picture with a Polaroid camera, and I've never been able to find it. So I was in the white light. Behind me, there was a big circle of white. Within there was a full silhouette of a white being with all different shades of white radiating off of him. The part, and as soon as I talk about this part, I can start to feel it. It was just this, I don't even, I've been trying to figure out the words, and there's something very warm about it in my heart. There's also something that kind of lifts me out of my body. And there's this vision of expansiveness and just this like, oh, everything is good. And that was really the feeling of it back then. And now, so I'm starting to shake because the energy comes in a bit. And I don't know how long it was, but there was, like, again, it was kind of like having the answers to everything, but there was no question. So you didn't really need an answer. It was just like everything seemed good. And within whatever time it was, the being behind me said, you have to go back. Your father wants you to stay. And I knew right then the father he was talking about was God. I went back into my body and then came to 3 days later in the hospital. There were a couple of moments where I kind of came to consciousness in the hospital and just have like visions of people walking by, but that was about it till I came to. My understanding of it came later. Again, but a couple of things happened to me. One is my hands would become warm when I touch people, and it still happens some, but I've learned to kind of have control over it, which so it doesn't happen all the time. But that I also started meeting a lot of people, like these spiritual synchronicities started happening that were really phenomenal. Probably the thing, and this could have been as big a change in my life as a near-death experience itself, is after I was well enough, I went back to Colorado for a little while, and working in the restaurant felt really blah. It was, it was a fun life, cooking, fast moving. We would get these little 7-ounce Michelob beers and drink them behind the counter there. But in that process, I was thinking of going back to school, but my mom kind of convinced me to move back east and go into business with my dad. And I grew up in the electrical contracting business, so it made sense. I knew how to do it. One day after work, I'm sitting in my apartment, someone knocks on the door. I open the door. There was a beautiful woman at the door, and she said to me, I'm the sister of your good friend from Colorado. My sister told me some very interesting things about you. She proceeded to tell me that she knew someone who teaches about what happens after we die. Now, her sister was someone I mentioned my experience to, not using the word near-death experience, not even thinking it was anything like dying. So then this woman introduced me to a Sufi sheikh who's a teacher in the Islamic religion. And when he started to talk to me about certain things, that's when I started to have ideas in my mind of what happened to me.
I can imagine it must have been really difficult recovering from the accident and at the same time trying to piece together what had happened and what you felt by having no frame of reference or nothing to check. I mean, the internet wasn't there, so you couldn't just go online and try to Google things.
No.
So what did it feel like, or did you just dismiss it as, oh, perhaps hallucinations?
I didn't dismiss it as hallucinations because I knew that it was real. There's been not one moment that I doubted that it was real all this time. Part of me kind of dismissed it not as something that important. I don't know. There was some people I mentioned it to who did not like it, and I only mentioned it to a few people. But after some people reacted in a funny way, I stopped talking about it for a long time. But I didn't feel, I didn't really notice how much it affected me until I was able to start talking about it, because the healing stuff in me started to happen, and things, my life still just pulls me in that direction. So I met that Sufi sheikh, and he talked to me about Mary and Jesus, and that's when I really understood the love in my near-death experience was the love that Mary experienced from God. And then when he mentioned Jesus, I knew that being behind me was Jesus. But there was, I don't know, there was a struggle, but it's not like I felt this great inner turmoil about it. I just assumed, I didn't know there was a way to live more in that. I just assumed it was incorporate that and live in the world, which is true, but I've learned that I can really focus on the spiritual part, and the world has changed since then. Like, people are open to it. It's in TV shows, it's in movies. Like, it's unusual to mention it to someone and they have no interest in it whatsoever. And it's not like it was back then where people would look at you like you're crazy. They look at you like you're a little crazy, but not like it was back then.
I can imagine, and I'm a big fan of it being a bit more open, and of the fact that we can talk about it. For anybody that's experiencing it, we have so many people in the comments that talk about their own experience, but they would never, do an interview or speak about it because they're afraid of the people around them. But just the fact that they can listen to other testimonies and sort of understand what has happened to them, it helps them a lot to process the experience.
It does. It helps me to talk about it. It helps me to know there are other people out there doing the same thing. It just, again, I didn't realize what an important part of me it was, I guess, back then. But there's also the part, even before my near-death experience, I knew there was something else. And my perception when I was young was that it was about love, which it is, but it was still like I'd see people and wonder, why aren't they acting from this spiritual, loving place? Not using the word spiritual, but the word loving. And so I've been able to see that in people since I'm very young. And I don't know, again, I didn't, it still seems weird to me, to tell you the truth. There's people that are, I can see the good in people, and a lot of people are just not connected to it. Some people really think they are, and they're not connected to it. And I think those are the ones, I don't know, everyone's on their spiritual path, whatever it is. So I've had to learn to respect that. And, it's like, how do I get in the right place inside of me to honor and respect people pretty much wherever they're at.
So tell me, how did you get from the place of you've had this accident and then you start processing the NDE, understanding a bit more of it, you start learning more with the master that you mentioned. How do you get from there to understanding what your life path is supposed to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. Partially, I mean, I know I'm kind of there, but I'm still in that process. So, I mean, I met this guy, and so it wasn't, I don't know, I mean, it's an interesting process. So for me, I know I'm never done and there's more to do. And there is even though when I started out, I was talking about, I was kind of blessed to not know in my mind what it was. I still have a long way to go. I had two things happen in the last couple of weeks when I was working with people. Like, someone asked me a specific question about something, and two times, two separate things, and both times I was looking, and I look in my inner vision to see what it is, and I didn't know. So I said, I don't know. But as soon as I said, I don't know, then I got an image of what they were asking me about. And I was kind of laughing because it is learning to not know and learning to let that part of my mind go. And then I got the information directly. So it was kind of cool.
I can imagine. And I think accepting the fact that we don't know certain things, that's often something that we don't do. And we're, I think, from a very early age taught not to do that. You never say, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. You always say, you know. And yes, it's this ongoing process. So I mean, I met that guy, I studied with him for years, and then I met other teachers again through these what seemed like coincidences. But the funniest kind of one that's kind of most profound, I guess, is that woman just showed up at my door. I didn't do anything. I wasn't looking, you know, wasn't out in the world. The other ones happened as much, but I was usually doing something in the world when I met the other people. It's great.
So, how did you end up doing the kind of work that you're doing today and helping people heal?
Well, from the get-go, that the Sufi sheikh talked to me about healing, and he did some healing. He did some really cool healing too, but a lot of his work was based on other things than what I do. And he talked to me about it, and it just seemed something I'm just naturally good at, so it unfolded. But certain things have happened. So before, now I know, but then I didn't know. So some things happened where I did some things that help people. Uh, I guess a big one was there was so where I grew up, it was, a community. There were, it was an upper middle class uh, neighborhood in Westchester, New York, a pretty wealthy area. But our next door neighbors, our families were very close. So they had a kid around my age. They had other kids. I had a brother and two sisters. They had three kids, and our parents were close. But the father was talking to me. This was after my near-death experience, and he said that his father, who I knew from the time I was very young, was sick and was about to pass away. And I said to him, and I still remember the feeling because part of me was being sarcastic and something in me was also urging me to do this. And I said, I'll pray for him. And I did. I went and prayed for him. But again, I didn't take it that seriously like I do now. And I felt, when I prayed for him, I felt something happen. I felt this energy come in and like I knew something happened. But, who am I to know anything like that? So I kind of just didn't I just let that go. But a couple of days later, I saw the guy I told that to, and he said, I think when you prayed for him, something happened because he got so much better right then. And I said, I knew that, but it was pretty cool that this guy even was open to that and said something like that. So there were other things, and over the years, and there are still days I have doubt about what I do because it seems so miraculous and so amazing. But it was funny, a couple of months ago, I was kind of complaining to myself, oh, I need to get more miracles happening because I haven't had any in a long time, which isn't really true. Um, but then a couple of days later, this woman sent me a text saying, I want to make another appointment with you. The energy changed and I'm walking. And I haven't walked in 8 years. And even when I got that, I was kind of skeptical, but she sent me a lengthy text after that. And she goes, yeah, I'm able to go to the supermarket. And it just seemed like she was mostly sitting in her apartment before. And she got these poles she was walking with. And then I talked to her and she went from basically hardly being able to move around to being able to walk after one session. It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does this happen a lot?
It does, yes. So more times than not, though, it takes more than one session, but almost always something shifts in people. Once in a while, people don't feel it at all, but usually those are people who, people have certain things and they don't want to get better, to tell you the truth, but I almost always see something shift in the person. Sometimes I'll work with someone and then I'll hear from them months later and they go, something happened then, and put me on the path to healing. Sometimes I have to work with people a bunch of times to get things to really moving. So I'm writing my story in a book, and I wrote this analogy that I had heard one time that's kind of like flicking an electric switch. And, most people know if you flick the switch, the light will go on, but almost no one knows how electricity works. And even the people who understand it the most don't understand it very much at all. So, but this is like, there are a lot of switches. I don't know exactly where they are, but intuitively I can find them. So sometimes there's just one switch, sometimes there's a lot of switches. I got to flick before the light comes on.
Does it maybe also have something to do with the resistance of a person?
There is, yes. Yes, sometimes it's easier to work with people who have no idea what I'm doing or don't believe in it at all, to tell you the truth, because they're not, they're different levels. A lot of the levels have nothing to do with the person who's thinking consciously, but sometimes it does.
No, that's very surprising because I would have thought it would be more difficult to work with somebody who doesn't believe rather than somebody that doesn't. Maybe their expectations are a bit out of line.
Whatever. Yes, I don't. Right. Yes. So sometimes people are. Yes, sometimes people, well, in general, where there's part of us that's a little resistant to spiritual progress because it's designed to maintain the physical level. And the spiritual level and physical level, they appear to be opposites. The truth is, when you do this in balance, it kind of goes like this, and then it's all one. But sometimes people are very afraid of the movement. When things are balanced spiritually, they're moving. We tend to think when things are balanced physically, they're not moving. Like we want to keep everything from moving because a lot of times we experience a movement as pain or something hurting. So it's allowing that movement. They're just think. I mean, almost, yeah, I've had some things. There was one, it was very frustrating because it's a very famous person that I won't say who it is because they didn't give me permission to, but they had a session with me and they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. They were feeling energy in their body and, like it was like the greatest thing in the world. And then I got in touch with them a few days later, which when you work with famous people, that's what you do. That you got to do little things differently. But when I contacted them, they said, "Oh, nothing happened." And I'm thinking, "What?" And I just realized their lifestyle they were living was not very healthy. And usually, when people work with me, their lifestyles change. So something in them didn't want to make that change.
That's what I wanted to get to as well, because I think a lot of what you do is helping clear energy blocks and changing
Yes.
the energy around somebody that allows for disease or for things like, somebody not walking and not being able to walk to go to walking. But what happens if we have this session with you, we feel a difference, and then, we go back to whether it's eating takeout and just being in front of the TV all day and not moving, or it's having the same thoughts of I can't do this and I can't do that. How do you work with clients on also changing the mindset around it to sustain their new energy?
Yeah, things change. So there's some of that, and there's some of it. I know if people work with me, they're going to get better. So sometimes I can just smile. But years ago, I had someone come to me. This is when I was seeing people in person, and she came for a while. You'd see her, you could tell she was unhealthy. Her skin tone wasn't healthy. She was overweight. And I realized in between, she came to me regularly for a while. And I realized one week in between her sessions that she would charm me out of talking about lifestyle changes. And so I said something to her, and she said, "Yeah, I'm not going to do anything you tell me to do. I'm just here for you to fix me," which really is fine with me. I appreciate it. I like when people are honest. Most of the time, people are telling me I even say, if I suggest something, will you do it? And then people say they're doing it, and I know they're not. So, but I don't know how much later it was, but all of a sudden she came. So she was a businesswoman. She would come in always with a black business suit, usually with slacks, once in a while a skirt. But she came in one time with a tan jacket and tan pants on. I knew something was up, and she said, "Now I'm going to do everything you told me to do. I'm taking a sabbatical from work." And she did. She changed her diet. She went swimming every day. She started meditating. It also was one of these synchronicities because she was a pretty well-known public relationship person. And she said, "I'm only going to be collecting half my salary. Can I pay you in services?" And which ended up being a really good thing for me. Uh, so she was doing some public relationship stuff, getting my name in newspapers and stuff. And because of that, I ended up meeting one of the teachers I met. These synchronistic things would happen all the time. But I learned from her to trust people in their process, wherever it is, and I try to get people to be honest with me. It's just easier to work from where they are to where they want to go and what they're going to do. Meditation and journal writing are the two most important tools, probably, and exercise, but people are very resistant to meditating and journal writing. So I understand that.
It sounds like meditation and journal writing are some of the things that it's almost like a blanket advice that you could give to anybody.
Yeah.
And I think some of the benefits of meditation, I would know I practice it. But I'm really keen to understand what they are from your perspective, and as well about journal writing. That's
Yeah.
really interesting to me. I have to say, I've heard great things about it, but so far, no action, zero.
Yeah, most people don't want to do it. I know it took me a long time to get into it, but now I do it every day. Well, first of all, you don't have to do it perfectly. Okay, so, and you can do each of those, even a minute or two a day can make a big difference. But it is that thing of, can you sit down with yourself and feel your feelings and be present with you? And, sometimes it's, so with meditation, I mean, let go of the idea of quieting your mind, first of all, because I've been doing this for way more years than most people, and still there's days it's just hard. Like today, I sat down, it was really good for, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, and then blah, 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 blah. And, I had a lot to do, so I stopped doing it. But if I stuck with it a while longer, but you don't have to do it perfectly. Just the process of sitting there with yourself and making that dedication to your spiritual growth is very helpful. Why is it? It's just the way it is. People are very resistant. Journal writing. I love to type, so I do it on my Chromebook. But yeah, people are resistant. I love it. I don't. If I miss a day in a month, I'm very surprised.
Well, I'll do my best to try it. I'll give it a go, I think, for a few days and see what happens. Because I think the idea of feeling your feelings, that sounds like something that a lot of us could do a bit more, myself
Yeah, and
included.
it's really, for me, it's a way to get my head on straight in the morning, towards good things instead of, so I have a tendency to worry too much. So I write about that and how do I get focused on not being worried. Sometimes my inner voice sounds worried about things. Like the other day, I had such a great day planned for myself, but part of me was worried about it for some reason. It was strange. But through the journal writing, I type that out. I go, oh, yeah, I can be positive and think of the good things. And it just makes my whole day much better. My spiritual intentions get clear. So I have an outline of lengthy things, but I tell people just do some of it. So just
And
writing down things you're grateful for every day can make a really big difference.
oh, I've done that and it has for me as well, I have to say. So it does sound that when we're journaling, we should not necessarily go into our fears, but maybe try to debunk them or try to understand why we will have a good day. Am I getting this right?
Well, what I do, I usually do write about, so I suggest people to choose areas to work on. And so I have sleeping, which I'm much better at, but when I was younger, I would wake up really early and just get going. And, I realized it'd be good to have more sleep. The worry thing, I also check my body to see how it is. And I'll write, and really it just write something about it and then focus on my breathing. Okay, and then do that again. Not really try to fix it, but get clear about what it is. And um, sometimes it's just like with if I stretch and exercise, my body feels better the next day. So I'll make a note of that. It is trying to get your head on right, but it's not. And sometimes you have to delve into the negative things to do that. But in general, that's what I do. Then I'll do some gratitude stuff. I also have a thing about writing your intention or ask questions of yourself. In one way, we're living each day answering questions, like we're looking for, we're, it's almost like we're biological predetermined or whatever, that's not the right word, but to look for negative things. And this is like, so I'll ask, how can I be in my loving heart today? If I have to deal with someone that I know it's hard to do that, I'll say, how can I be in my loving with this person? Or how can I, if I'm looking at my finances, how can I make more money today? How can I, enjoy my day? Ask questions like that so my mind is seeking those answers. Then I'll do what I'm grateful for, things that made me happy, things I did well, and then my most important goals for the day. But I always include the inner spiritual process. Well, to be in my heart, to connect to my breathing, to, look for the good, things like that.
Absolutely. And I think such a practice, it sounds like it's a game changer for anybody doing it because
It
it
is the
does train
best.
your mind to look
And
for
I'll
the
tell
good.
everyone out there, it helps you make more money. It helps attract money too. So people love that. And health and love and good things.
So because you've mentioned it helps to make more money and it's such a triggering thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, but is it because you're focusing your is it because you're calling out this is what my attention will go to, this is where my focus will go, or why does it work that way?
Well, the thing of gratitude, you're just making that vibration inside of you, the things you're grateful for, and it attracts more that way. When I ask the question, how can I make more money? I, you know, I don't really want to be thinking all day about how I'm going to make money. So I want that to be in there. I think it is you set it up inside of you to create something good and you open up to that and it's it doesn't need to be money. I've known people that are live a really great life and have almost no money. So, but there is that thing of having joy and having a nice place to be, having clothes and all these things that are part of God's abundance that it doesn't need to have money, but usually it involves money.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we were talking earlier about prayer,
Yes.
and you mentioned when you prayed something shifted in your friend's, I think, father, was
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
My friend's grandfather.
Oh,
So I was
grandfather.
talking to my friend's father, but the grandfather was the one who uh, was, about to pass away. He didn't. I mean, he lived for months longer after, like they were saying, he was going to die like any day, which was kind of cool.
So that brought me to a comment that I read a while ago, and somebody said, I'm praying for this thing every day. I'm doing my best. I'm
Yeah.
trying to attract it. I'm really focusing on it. I'm trying to be grateful. You know, we have like this laundry list of things to do if we want to action something.
Yeah.
And she said, it sounds like God is not hearing my prayers. Like I'm just praying in vain and I don't
Yeah.
know what else to do. Have you had anybody come to you with such a question, and what would you say to that person?
Yeah, so it's not like a fun phrase I've heard. It's not like God is the bellhop in the sky. So it's really like how can you line up? So um, I mean, there's some people are good at creating things without the spiritual part, but that's not what I do. So there's the inner part of joy and enthusiasm and loving and caring. Um, Sometimes you have to practice those things. Like, what would it be like inside of you if you had that? So sometimes when I really need practice with that, I'll do mirror work. And you can do it for just a short time every day. I normally start when I'm brushing my teeth because I'm looking in the mirror and I'll look in my eyes and say hello. Then after I finish brushing my teeth, put my timer on for 1 minute and practice the feeling of being appreciated, practice the feeling of being abundant, and practice those feelings so you're creating that inside of you. There's the part of that, and I mean, there's ways to do it almost mechanically, but you have to do it a lot. So, but you got to get in the feeling of abundance and appreciation and joy and gratitude. But you can't just, even when you're doing the journaling, sometimes I could write one sentence, so I'm grateful for this, but sometimes I'm not feeling it. So I'll have to write like 10, up to 10 sentences of little parts to it, just till I can get that happy feeling in my heart and then really go for it. Okay. But the mirror work can be really helpful for that too.
I can imagine. I mean, it sounds, I have to say, it sounds a bit daunting, the idea of looking in the mirror and appreciating myself. And it's
Yeah,
so strange because we expect other people to do that, right? But
right.
it's very
Well,
confronting.
right. The good thing when other people do it is you feel it inside. So practice feeling it inside, and that can help attract money. It can help attract love. It can, then there's also the part of your karma, and you kind of have to love yourself. So understand there's a process where you do your best but love yourself and give yourself credit, and then take the steps, and then you're looking out in the world for things that change. Sometimes I know I've passed a test and I have no idea what I really did, but things are different in the world. So I have something that happened. It's happened over some years. So I've been dating. I haven't been in a really very long-term relationship since like 2010. But so in the beginning, I was attracting women that I wasn't attracted to, and it was like so frustrating. And I knew it was something inside. I didn't know exactly what, so I started working on that, doing the journal writing, doing the mirror work. All of a sudden, one day it changed, and that has changed since. And that was like 10 years ago. Okay, and then a funny thing happened a few years ago. All of a sudden, I've been dating all black women. And it's like something changed in me. I don't know. It's not like I'm seeking it or anything. It's just like, wow, what? And my friend said, oh, yeah, you had a past life recently where you were black, and that's why. But it's like amazing. So I know something changed in me. I don't know exactly what, but then I'm seeing the difference in the world. And that process right there is how we manifest things spiritually. We have an intention to move into this gratitude and abundance and joy. We don't know. It's not like, oh, here's the switch, here's the switch. It's like we're just working on this general thing, doing the best we can. Then when it starts to shift, you'll see things in the world. Sometimes you'll notice a change in you and other people don't see it yet because they've been seeing you the other way for a long time. So you just have to keep sticking with it.
That's really interesting, and
It's
it's
wild, yeah. But it's kind of like with my healing abilities, because I had, definitely had some right after my near-death experience. I didn't know what to do with it, but things happened that I learned from. Then I started learning consciously from it, but still things are happening that are unfolding in me, and I have to allow my mind to relax and let it unfold, and then I can learn from, because it's in there. It's in there for everybody. Well, yes. So the love and the abundance part is most likely in there for everybody, but some people it's not in the way we're talking about, but everyone has something really good in them and it can manifest.
and it's about connecting with our inner self.
Yes, and practicing those things that you want. And it's kind of like assuming that they're happening, but really practicing it. Okay, so like I said, I go in the mirror and I look at myself and go, oh, you did a great job with this, and look at myself, oh, you look good, things like that you'd like to hear other people say. But you got to feel it in your heart and feel it in your gut.
That sounds like very hard work for, I think, a lot of us.
But just sticking with it, being
Yeah.
gentle and loving with yourself, because it's not beat up on yourself, but just practice and practice. Like anything else you want to do well, it takes practice.
Yeah, and I think sticking with it until it feels true, because I can tell you if I go to the mirror now and I say, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so wonderful, I would just burst out laughing, like I promise you that.
Laughing is
But
good.
I think is getting that laugh out, then
Yeah,
trying to find something that I like about myself. And I think it's almost like you do with another person, right? When you like somebody else, you try to connect with them and you try to find ways to connect.
exactly. You do that for yourself, and
Yeah.
that's the trick. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting relationship that I have to discover. And I would
Well,
invite
you look at
everybody
it.
to
I,
do
I mean,
that.
I've done it for a long time, so I know it works. But you just try it; you'll see it. I mean, it. Usually, you see some change right away.
So I wanted to talk about the healing work that you do. Have you noticed any kind of misconceptions that people come to you with?
Um, yes. Well, like I said, there's the people who think they know, and then there's the people who don't know anything. Those are the biggest misconceptions. So, but I'm pretty good at working with, like, I said, in some ways it's easier to work with people who don't know anything and don't believe in what I do at all. And they do have to be open to it somewhere, but most in their consciousness, but most people are. But it's, when I'm trying to find the words how to tell even the thing of not knowing. Like you have to not know in your mind. Everyone goes, "Oh yeah, I know how to do that," and then they don't. They're just kind of saying that. I mean, a, I have two clients right now. One who's did some of that and was really struggling for a while and was resistant to having another session with me. And I normally don't do this, but I emailed them a bunch of times saying, "You'll feel so much better." And then they did, and they feel so much better. But they were in this place of just a lot of old patterns, but a lot of their patterns were they did a lot of spiritual work. So, and there's someone else now who's doing stuff, and I'm in a bit of a dilemma about like how to talk to him about it, because it is basically saying, "Look, you don't know what you're talking about, and I do." And how do you say that in a nice way to people?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah. But
what are
yeah. So the people who don't know some people do come to me once in a while trying to giving me challenges to prove things. So, and I'm fine with that. I've had times. There's one time someone's father came to see me, and he had a really cool experience. He sometimes the room fills with colored light, and not everyone could see it, but he saw it, and he goes, "What happened?" And I tried to explain, and he didn't believe me, but he was looking around for a physical reason why he was seeing green in the room all over the place. And at some point he gave up and said, "I don't know what you do, but I feel so good."
Yeah, and I think that's the point where we want to get to, right? Where regardless of whether we believe or not, but the proof is there and it just feels better.
Yeah, what I do doesn't depend on the person believing it or not. I know for what a lot of people do does, but what I do, it doesn't matter. So I've worked on people, sometimes their family members or friends drag them to me because they're sick and they've tried every medical thing, and they come and they get better. So it's really, I love it. So I think it's just so cool and exciting. It's every time I think about it, it's great.
It must be one of the most rewarding things to be able to do that.
It is. Yeah, just to be a part of the joy, and it in a funny way, it's when I can step into the joy of it, that's what's rewarding. Yeah, it is. Yes, I've been blessed to have my near-death experience and meet people who've helped me transform even more than that. It's really great.
So, when we think of people that can benefit from a healing, is it just people with different kinds of physical symptoms like a disease or something physical that is bothering them? Or can we also do it, say we have a trauma in our past, say we have patterns of thoughts that just keep creeping up and we don't possibly see a way to break that? So what are some of the things outside of like your average disease that we can think of when it comes to healing?
Yeah, I mean, some people come to see me, they just want to do better spiritually, and they don't necessarily have a disease at all. Some people come to me, have psychological diseases, mental illnesses, physical illnesses. It's really what I focus on is their spiritual unfoldment and their spiritual blossoming, I guess, and the healing is really just the side effect of it. So it's um, I mean, I've worked with all sorts of people. So, I mean, the ones with the physical healing are kind of the easiest to see. But of course, I, I encourage people to send me emails after. And, when someone says, "Oh, I just feel so much better," and they'll say, "Oh, yeah, and my son's better, or my husband," because it kind of goes to their whole family. Yeah, all the things you're talking about could really benefit from it. I've never, um, there, like I said, some people are very stuck and really don't want to change, but I, I could probably count on one hand, how many times that's happened over the years. I just mention it to not seem, I don't, a lot of times I tell the stories where people got better in one session, but it usually takes longer than that. And um, there's work to be done for some people. There's spiritual work. It's not like, we do come here to learn certain things, but what we're here to learn is a little elusive. It's mostly, can you love yourself and just go through those situations? like the thing with the dating, I realized, this is what's going on for me. I have to stay in it. I can't run away. So I just stayed in it. And then I must have gotten through my karma there. And then it got to that and, be, attracting women that I'm attracted to. Then I stayed with that. And then all of a sudden black women were there. And, I don't really care what color someone's skin is because that's just not how I am. But it's just interesting that happened. It's accepting where you're at, and then there's like, well, I'd like it to be over here. It's impossible for you not to be in your destiny and your karma. Impossible. So by accepting where you are, and it doesn't mean if you're suffering you have to be suffering, because there's another place you could be, and that you will be on your path also. But once you accept where this is, then it's like, I'd rather, can I take a step over there? Can I take a step there? Can I do that and move in that direction? And it is kind of, dear God, help me, because I have no idea what I'm doing, which a lot of times is what it is.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Laurence, this has been so fascinating to hear you speak about healing. I've learned so much, and I will try to start journaling. Journaling and talking to myself in the mirror, those are my actions from today's podcast.
Okay.
So,
if you want, send me a reminder. I'll send you my outline for journaling. There's description in there how to do it and everything. Also, anyone listening, same thing. I have a lot of great tools on my YouTube channel, and I just published my book about the breathing exercise I developed, and I'm writing another book. Lots of good tools there.
So can you share more about where people can find you if they're interested in working with you and the books and the tools that you mentioned?
Yes, my website is laurencebrock.com. My YouTube channel is Dr. Laurence Brock. Those are the best places to reach me. My texting or WhatsApp texting is 732-567-6388, +1 in the beginning for the US.